Welcome to episode number 6 of our podcast, The Ghost of Real Estate. I'm your host, Tim Galligan, and today we have a very special guest, Brandon Steiner of Steiner Sports. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Well, nice to be. I wish I was out on Long Island hanging out with you, but this snowman doesn't stop.
Right.
But I hope everybody out there is safe and everybody's finding their way. I know it's been a tough time for many people out there, so I hope that everybody is either finding their way or on their way to finding their way.
Well, then, thanks again for joining the show. I really appreciate it. So I have a whole bunch of questions. I mean, you've done.
I'm an open book, so don't hold back.
All right. So how did you get started? I know you were doing some work, and correct me if I'm wrong, with Hyatt, and it morphed into this whole agency of Steiner Sports. Excuse me. How did you get started and get to where you are today?
Well, I'm not with Steiner anymore. So where I am today is like everyone else here, grinding and starting a new company. I'm so excited. I feel like I'm 19 again. You know what's funny when you ask me that question? I feel like I'm starting again. I almost feel like all that stuff that I've accomplished doesn't even exist.
Right.
And I think it's really important. Like, I don't live in my past. And the road that I got to get here is a crazy winding road. Now I'll take you through some of it because I think it's some good learning lessons. But generally, like, I'm just trying to learn from the lessons and not dwell on too much of what happened, good, bad, and indifferent. Because as I'm building new, I really feel like I'm in my 20s again. And like, I'm waking up nervous. All the stuff that I talked about in my first book, which is the business playbook, which is really some fundamental one-on-one how you build a brand. And a lot of it is just I'm trying to figure out who my customer is. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my life and what I want to do with my time, which is so important because that's the motivation. When you know what you want to do, it's kind of what leads you to purpose. When you're dreaming big and you're thinking big and then all of a sudden you start getting, I'm not willing to accept where I'm at. So it doesn't really matter where you are. It doesn't. It
Right.
only matters what you want to accept. Like, I'm definitely not willing to accept, like, I'm older, I'm going to retire, I'm done. I'm like, that's just not acceptable to me. So now I'm in a hostile mindset about getting back into my 20s and really trying to figure out how to go become, a young entrepreneur again. And it's nice to say it, but then you got to do all the things that a young entrepreneur is willing to do, which is, grind out midnight, not go out, drink beers or have that big dinner. But, you go home, you work after you have dinner with your wife, like all the things I used to do.
Yeah.
I'm doing it again. I'm trying to recruit people, talent acquisition. So, for me, it's funny. Like I was always a crazy sports fan and everything did lead from one thing to the other. I was never one of those athletes that thought like, oh, wow, I hurt my knee. That's why I didn't make it. Like I was never making it. I couldn't even play varsity. Well, in the boroughs, I mean, it's, varsity sports is not easy, but it wasn't like I was even a high school varsity player level. I was a pure 100% rec player. You wanted me on your side because fundamentally I was pretty good and I played good defense and I had my days. But I think just overall, when I think about the start for me was, I lived with a Division I college football player, which was a blessing. And that kind of set the tone for me when I went to Syracuse. And who would have known because, white and black guys didn't live together. And it was really quite an experience. And it definitely led, I had no idea there was no sports business back in the 70s like it is now. So here I am living with this black Division I football player and really getting an understanding what it's like to be an athlete and kind of be the big man on campus and hanging out with them. And it kind of helped me towards what ended up being, my first business was a marketing business. I was just marketing players. I was just opening up players' fan mail. I was doing the restaurant thing, the sports bar thing with the sporting club. And when I couldn't really open up at that time was like ESPN Zone. I decided to open up Steiner Associates. It was like PR and doing some marketing stuff with sports bars. And man, I called up all the players I knew that I met at the sports bars and at the Hard Rock. And I said, maybe I can help you with some of your charity stuff. Maybe I can help you open up some fan mail because they were getting boxes of fan mail back then in the 80s. There were no websites. And one thing led to another. I started to understand what it's like to work with players and how to market those players. And sure enough, a few years later, when I didn't open up a big sports bar, which I was planning on, I opened up Steiner Sports. And I just started doing little things for players and trying to figure out how I could add value. I think that, when you think about your career and relationships, I'm a relationship guy. What's important really is having a high level of non-acceptance, and B, how you can create value. And value is what you can do for someone that they can't do for themselves. And a lot of times people come at me with all kinds of different value props, but it really has nothing to do with me. Somebody who, if you want to do business with me, is like, what can you do for me that I can't do for myself? I could do a lot, but I can't do it all. But if you can find something that I can't do and do it for me, or something I don't want to do, I'm keeping you around. And that's exactly what I did for a lot of the athletes. I found stuff that they couldn't deal with, didn't want to deal with, and I helped them.
Awesome. So how did you go about even getting in touch with these athletes? I mean, I would think that customer acquisition from a real estate in my field is hard. How in the world are you doing customer acquisition on your side?
One day I woke up and I said, something, I got to figure out a way to get in with these athletes. And remember, if you didn't have their home phone number, there were no cells,
right?
No emails. So how am I going to get these guys? So I decided to do a survey, and I did this survey, and instead of thinking about what I could do, I came up with a list of questions for the athletes to find out more about them. What's your favorite drink? What's your favorite product? Ever any health issues? Any medicines you're taking? I said, look, I'm going to all these companies, and when I go to them, I want to have this data and information. So if it's a fit, I could recommend you to be a spokesman. And on the bottom, it said, will you allow me to market you and use me in your brochures? So I remember I had one employee at the time. He was an intern, and I was in an office share, the receptionist. And I sat down with the intern, and I said, we're going to send a letter to every player we could possibly think of, every coach. And we sent it to whatever address we could, to the team address. We had some addresses. We sent out a couple thousand surveys. I still have the rejection ones that are phenomenal. I kept them. But we have we got like maybe 100, 150 yeses. Not the biggest names. Some were decent. And 150 people said yes. And I did this brochure that I think it cost me like $500, print like 5,000 of them. And it said, we deliver. Let us help you find the perfect fit. And then we listed all these different athletes that we had connected. And then I did this postcard mailing, which we sent out 100,000 of them for $1,000. And there's like Val packs. And also said, we can help you find the right athlete to help you grow your business.
Wow.
And we got like, 10 calls from that. But one of them was a big lead that ended up being a lot of business.
Really?
And that's how we got rolling. I ended up sending out the survey. And then what I would do is I would call up all these companies. And I would say, look, I've got all this data. Tropicana orange juice. Like, I know 5 athletes that think Tropicana orange juice is their favorite drink. I think we should talk about maybe using some of these athletes at a trade show, whatever. So, I found out some data, and I also found out what players needed. Like, there's nothing better than calling up a player. Like, I remember trying to call Hank Aaron up, and I needed him for this Nissan video, and he would not return my call. Finally, I called the secretary, and I go, could you please get me on the phone with Hank? He says, he's so caught up. He just bought a new house. He's trying to buy a lawnmower. A John Deere? I said, just put me through for 2 minutes. A month of trying to get the guy on the phone. I go, Hank, you're not going to believe this, but I got this deal. Nissan needs you to do this video in your office. It'll take you no more than 20 minutes to record this message for one of their top salesmen. And in exchange, they're giving you a John Deere lawnmower and cash. Because you're kidding. I said, I'll have the best John Deere lawnmower brought to your house probably by Friday, and then the camera crew could be there next week. He goes, the camera crew could come now. You're really getting me that John Deere? I said, and cash. And he was like, great. So, value proposition is really trying to find out what someone needs. It's not guesswork, and you gotta dig in and figure it out, because when you know what somebody needs, you can deliver it. The rest of the stuff will fall into place. And that's what I did. I was just calling up companies going, hey, I think I got a good match for you. And it's hard. Like, you're calling up and you get more rejection than, an ugly high school kid with a lot of pimples trying to find a prom date. I'm like, I'm just, I'm trying to I'm calling companies up, just trying to get meetings. I mean, I'm dialing for dollars that you can't believe. I mean, I learned that from my mom. My mom's favorite line was, you got to have balls. It's the name of my second book.
Yeah.
And she was a dialer. She dialed 2-3 people at the same time. and talk to 2 or 3 people at the same time. And that's, if you ever see some of my earlier pictures of press, I actually talked to 2 people at the same time, and I would negotiate deals with hold on. And I would get a deal done. No, I'll call you back crap.
Right.
Hold on. He wants this. Can you give us that? And then, okay, we're good.
Wow.
I'm not as I'm calling you back stuff. I was a tremendous dialer. This whole internet thing didn't serve me well. It serves me well now, but
Right.
I was very, very, very good with the phones, and I had I had a real passion and a real rhythm to dialing and getting a whole of a lot of people.
Awesome. And then now when you're starting this out, I mean, you're not only just out there making calls, making connections, figuring out ways to provide value, but you're really creating a whole new category of business. Now, this is, never really been done before like this at all, correct?
Yeah, I don't recommend it. I think, being an inventor or trying to invent a category is not that smart. You want to be an improver.
Right.
I think the people that have made the most money find something that they're passionate about, do everything they can to find out everything about it. I always say to people, like, do you know who the best person is in what you do for a living? Like, who is the best real estate person on the planet? Who are the top 5 real estate individuals that have sold more real estate than, and have you read every book, followed them on YouTube, and figured out a way to go get in a room with them to talk to them for 20 minutes? Because I just want to know who I'm going to beat. I want to know what the competition is. There's no interest in trying to be pretty good.
Right.
The only interest you should have is how can I one day be the best? And with this category, I don't know, it was just it was like a hobby, and it was kind of like all over the place. And I just figured, this is an opportunity for me to go in and try to straighten it out and organize it. And, a lot of things I did, and why I tell people don't try to be an inventor, but be an improver, because as you're inventing things, it's really more for the common good than it is necessarily for yourself. When you start inventing things, most people that invented a lot of things didn't get the full benefit. And I'm sure I'm very grateful. I mean, I did get a lot of benefits, but, for all the things that I've invented that people have copied and used, I probably, you don't really get the full benefit. But,
right.
It's been fascinating it's a lot of wear and tear. It's very, when you put yourself in that position, when you're trying to not only invent something or create something, then you got to activate it. And, it's a really dark place. It can bring you to tears. It's not like, I feel kind of good about it now, but, I got to tell you there, because when you get into this passion you want to be extraordinary, you want to do something that no one's done. And in order to do that, you're going to create a mess.
Right.
You're going to, it's like I have my employees come to me now, like, Brandon, you're all over the place. Say, yeah. You think there's no straight line here? There's no local train I can get on that's going to take us. I don't know what I'm doing. So you go and you create this mess. You go out there, you really just throw yourself at a whole bunch of different things that you think instinctively is going to work. And then you realize you got to put some order to it. And that's where the pain and the gain comes in, because as you put some order to all of this, I don't know if this makes sense, but as you organize all these things that you've kind of thrown out there, because you're looking at everything completely different than anyone else. So there's no one else that's even understanding. I'd come home, my wife would be just rolling her eyes like, I have no idea what you're talking about and what you're doing. I'm still not even sure she still does. And that's the things, like when you get into real estate and you want to disrupt things, don't expect everybody to come running to your side, because most people aren't going to see what you see. Right. So when you turn your high level of entrepreneurship and you're motivated to find white space and do something that no one else has done, be prepared to be in a dark, lonely place. And I don't know if you ever really can get into anything great unless you're really miserable. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. Can you get to a great place without having some level of misery for a reasonable time? Like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know. I think you're miserable when you're miserable, and then you're miserable when you're not miserable because you're bored and you're not creating misery. So I think entrepreneurship is not for everyone, and your first idea is not your best idea, because as good as your idea is, there's another idea right around the corner if you want to keep digging.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know you speak pretty openly about growing up, and you were poor from Brooklyn. Do you think that has a lot to do with the mindset that drove you to go through those dark places to get to where you are, from Steiner Sports and also today with CollectibleXchange and Steiner Agency?
I mean, I think there is some to it. I mean, I don't recommend a 10-year-old go out and work. And I think some of that was out of need, not out of passion. I
Right.
don't think at 10 I was necessarily passionate about having to go work. But if you're hungry, you don't have clothes, when your teacher calls you up to the front of the room and says, he took a collection of money, and he tells you you got a rip in your right knee, you're wearing the same pants for 2 weeks in a row. After you get through the humiliation, you come to a realization, even at 10, that maybe, because when you're a kid, you don't really know. All you know is what you know. And then you realize, like, whoa, man, I'm not in the right, I'm not right. I'm not good. So I went to my mother's room. I said, on Saturday, I'm going to go out and find a job. And I did. I found Freddie the Fruit Man at 10 years old. It was a fruit and vegetable store. I was going up and down Kings Highway. It's about a 2-mile strip of stores. And finally, I found a job. And I was never late for that job. And I told my mother that she didn't have to pay for anything for me anymore. I was good. At 10, I walked in her and said, you don't have to worry about me. And if I have extra money, I'll give it to you to support the house. And, one of the things I learned from that, and I really can't stress enough to anybody listening, is that at some point in your life, you need to draw the line, though, and be accountable. Because the more accountable you can be and want to be, you'll be surprised how your results will increase. And a lot of people will use their past as an excuse of why they're not accountable, why, it's, the plum, poor little old me. Don't be a plum. Like, you have to be accountable. I think for me, being accountable at 10 years old, I'm not an excuse maker. If I make a promise, I make a commitment, I do it. And I think that a lot of times you can't let your past dictate your future. And most importantly, no matter how tough your circumstances are, there's 2 things that I like to bring up. And that is, 1, your future is not fixed. Your future is wide open, regardless of what you think. Sometimes you can't even believe some of the things you're thinking, but your future is not fixed. Your future still could be anything you want to be, regardless of your past.
Right.
And don't let your past dictate your future. Just because your circumstances suck, and a lot of people right now, their circumstances suck. They may have lost some really important people. Their business may have gotten wiped out. Their business is down. Family is struggling. Doesn't mean that you're not valuable. Doesn't mean you still can't kill it. Your circumstances suck. And your circumstances are a variable. They'll come and they'll go.
Right.
But you have to always remember that you're a valuable person and not get confused between your circumstances and your own situation. And I think my mother always said, look, we're poor. Our circumstances are a little shaky. But you are an incredible young person, and there's nothing you can't do. And she would drive that home on many, many levels very often. And she was not a soft little pillow shoulder to cry on. When I came home and I hit difficulties, it was not, oh, poor Brandon. And I think that a lot of parents out there, I think you should be a shoulder to cry on at times, but I think you should also not be afraid to let your kid fail and not kick his ass or kick her ass a little bit, because I think sometimes kids need it. I know I'm on a rant here, but I remember when I got fired from Hyatt, that was my dream job. I mean, all I want to do, when I got an accounting degree from Syracuse, which is a whole story in itself, with 760 boards, pass fail high school and no money. My mother's like, hey, you want to go to college? You probably don't have to. And all my life, my mother's like, you better go to college. She's like, you've been working now 8 years on the street. You probably can go up there and teach marketing. But if you're going to go to college, you better go get an accounting degree, because one day, if you want to own a company, you're going to need an accounting or law degree. And my mother's like, listen, you got no grades. We went to pass fail, 760, no money. I want you to go to the most expensive school in New York State. That was Syracuse. And then you got to have to go up there and make a sale. And I'm just going to take you. But if you want to go to good school, you got to make a sale. So sure enough, boom. I did. I went up there, I made a sale, and they took me, which was an amazing opportunity at my level from a kid from Brooklyn to go to Syracuse. My dream job is I was in the kitchen. I was cooking at that time. All through high school, I worked full-time, college, different kitchens, cooking, baking. And I thought I was going to be ultimately a chef. And I wanted to be in the restaurant hotel business. And Hyatt was my dream job. I get that job. And this is probably the most valuable lesson I really ever learned from my mom, is that after 2.5 years, 3 promotions at Hyatt, I was killing it. I get fired. I go home. So I ran into a little political problem with a couple of managers and got into a couple of snags. I called my mother up. Can you believe what these people did to me? I was literally crying. Fired me. This is not right. I've been working 90, 100 hours a week. And then they just fire me. And my mother says, Brandon, Hyatt Hotels are a really good firm. They're growing like crazy. They're not looking to fire people that are good. They need people.
Right.
Obviously, you got some flaws in your game. Obviously, you got some personality issues that maybe you need to change the way you're thinking or the way you're looking at things. One day you look back on this, you'll laugh, but you got to get better. I went to the bookstore and bought every self-help sales book and realized that even though I had a credible work ethic and even though I was working really hard, that my mindset wasn't right. You know, I'm living Norman Vincent Peale, Dale Carnegie, I'm reading it all. And that was the beginning of me really understanding about how the most important thing is to get better, to improve, and to grow every day. And you got to want to do it. It's an inside job.
Yeah.
So, you know, my mother wasn't like, oh, you're right, poor you, don't worry about it. She's like, no, you're not good enough. You're not where you need to be. And even though you're a hard worker, it doesn't mean that you have some rough spots that you got to figure out. And that's exactly what I did.
So you went from that, getting fired from the Hyatt, selling fruit and vegetables up and down the street, to ultimately buying Yankee Stadium.
Well, what's funny is, first of all, it's more than that. It's first of all just starting a company with $4,000, building into a $50 million plus company, and you know, parting with Jeter and Mariano and the Mannings and the Yankees, Notre Dame. So all that happened. And at the same time, I sold a company or a Fortune 200 company, which people completely changed everything. I mean, I sold a collectible company to a top 200 company and sold them on the upside of collectibles, which is insane in itself. Omnicom Group. So that's crazy. And as soon as I did that, I'm like, man, I don't, you know, I'm thinking big. Like, if I did this, what's the next biggest thing? So I realized I hit a wall because I know I need the teams and leagues to get involved. And this is probably the best thing I did for the collectible business. That didn't necessarily help me the most, but it helped me. But it's certainly my legacy is partnering with the Yankees and selling off the old stadium. But what's crazy is, as soon as I do the Yankee Steiner deal, which took me 2 years to do, immediately I go to Notre Dame, I go to the Red Sox.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. And that's kind of how I blew the thing up. But when I'm doing the Yankee Steiner deal, after 2 years of negotiating this deal, because it was all these different, the Yankees were amazing. I mean, they were incredibly open-minded to the whole concept, and they totally faith in me to do this deal that no one had ever done, which is, you know, taking all the collectibles from the stadium. And in the last minute, I said, you know, guys, if you ever sell off, you know, if you ever knock down the stadium and decide I want to sell it off, if you build a new stadium, I got to be the one to take this thing down. And like, Brandon, we're not changing the contract at this point, but you have our word. And sure enough, 4 or 5 years later, they're like, you know, we're knocking the stadium down. And I remember talking about this with you, Brandon. You'd be the person we'd like to do it with. And they gave me the responsibility. Of course, I did it completely different than anybody else would. There's no concept that I ever thought of I'm not really looking to duplicate what other people have done. So right. No one's ever sold off a stadium like I sold that off. And a lot of people have duplicated my approach, which was creating hundreds of thousands of pieces as I broke Yankee Stadium down. That was kind of cool. I mean, it was a great project. It was a labor of love. It's where I invented the selling of grass legally. You know, the grass, we lifted off the last field, freeze dried it, you know, sold millions of dollars of dirt from the last field, and then decided to sell dirt from all the stadiums, bricks, stadium speakers, cut the foul pole up. I mean, I could take you through the whole process. I mean, like it was yesterday, even though it was 11 years, 12 years ago. You know, it's just my mind. It really was a big confidence booster to the creative part of my mindset that, you know, I just started coming up with all these crazy ideas to do with game used products. And I've had a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. And then ultimately you sold Steiner Sports itself, correct?
Yeah, what happened is Steiner got sold. You know, I love that company. I kind of hated losing my name, and I really want to do my own thing. And you know, obviously, when you sell your company, you don't get the right to dictate what happens, and it's probably something I really didn't really think much about. But so I lost my name, which kind of bums me out. But you know, CollectibleXchange, and then this new company I'm launching in a couple of weeks, Athlete Direct. You know, people can buy directly from athletes. There's a whole brand new disruption to the site where you go on a site and buy all the favorite things you want from the athlete directly. And then CollectibleXchange has, you know, going to have over 100,000 items come the end of March on it. It's just growing like weeds. So if you're out there, you want to sell something, you go right on the site and sell it and buy, sell all these proprietary stuff. what's fun about starting from new, it's hard to like leave something. People say, is it hard starting something new like this at 61 years old? It's like, it's hard leaving something. And I think most older people, like, you get so much in a rhythm and a habit of what you used to do. You do what you did, that and for me, that's the harder part. Is like you leaving your legacy, a company that I spent 30 years building.
Yeah.
And then wake up in the morning, want to disrupt everything you built, blow it up. But I always say you got to blow up what you have in order to make room for what you need. And that's kind of like been my mindset. Like, that was then. I love what I did, but I think there's something better now to be done for fans and for the athletes. And that's what I'm kind of putting on the table. It's extremely risky just because, you never know what's going to work. And I left a nice cushy little, but I like it. I like the action and I like the risk. And I like, taking a walk on the wild side. And it's amazing. Like, it's so hard to get something started, it's, just from the lease, and you got to get space and got to hire people and logos. And it's just, it's just a whole startup over again. But I tell people out there, it's like, if you have a good idea, it's only part of it. But, if you have a really good execution plan, it's more as important, if not more important, than the idea itself.
So athlete direct, so people are able to, so athletes, professional athletes, UFC fighters, or baseball player, MLB players, NHL players, anyone.
Yes, we do all UFC collectibles, and I do a whole bunch of schools and teams. When you go to CollectibleXchange, there is a whole bunch of partnerships that I have with teams and leagues. But athlete direct is the individual players, celebrities, musicians that are just selling their stuff individually. You can, get it personalized. You can send in stuff, whatever you want to do. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. What would be your number one piece of advice to entrepreneurs thinking about getting started, or even someone who is an entrepreneur but looking to really scale their business?
Well, I think it's true. And, I know you have a real estate show. I'll say, number one is talent acquisition and customer acquisition. So it's not only getting customers, getting quality customers. It's not getting employees, but getting quality customers. And both are extremely difficult. And you got to learn to say no. Not all business is good business. And just because an employee looks potentially good on the outside doesn't mean that they are. You got to really go through it thoroughly, because without great customers, without great employees, you're not going anywhere. And I think people underestimate, just because they see a good customer because they can make some money, doesn't mean they're a good customer. And then they end up driving you crazy. It's not good for the culture. Right. So not all customers, not all money is good money. And I think the other thing that's important is that, cash flow sometimes even trumps profit. I think it's so important to make money, but I think a lot of times people misunderstand the importance of cash flow, because when you run out of cash is when you start compromising. Yep. So as you're growing, you have money out in the street, people owe you money, you've invested in certain processes and payroll, whatever it is, you have to strategize for that. So your finance plan is critical. Even though you could be making money, I've seen many companies go out of business that were making money, had a great idea, just ran out of money.
Right.
Because at some point, if you can't pay people, you can't stay open. So it's really important that you have your cash flow strategy set up, because it's as important as to make money. You have to have money, and sometimes the two don't always match.
Awesome. Talent
acquisition, you can't spend enough time. You have to be like a dog without a bone. The way you were in college on a Saturday night, about 11 p.m. when you're trying to, you're out there looking for that perfect woman, the one you're going to marry. Like, that kind of focus and intensity has to be transferred over. And I'm not saying everybody's like that, but that mindset where it's like, I'm going to find the most beautiful girl tonight. And it's like, that's what you have to look at, kind of, hiring people. Like, you can't settle.
Awesome. All right, Brandon. Well, I know that you have a hard stop here, and I don't want to go over, but I really appreciate you coming on to the show. Thank you very much.
My book is available on CollectibleXchange for free.
Awesome.
All three books. I mean, if you're a sales entrepreneur, you'll love that. You got to have balls. And if you're somebody approaching your 40s, you got to buy the Living on Purpose. If you're a young salesperson and entrepreneur, you can buy the Business Playbook. I mean, the books have a lot of photos in there for those of you who struggle reading, but I really wrote those books as easy as simple to read and put into play. There's nothing in those three books, because you read these self-help books, Tim, like, you read these sales books, like, they make sense, but you're like, how am I going to put that in play? Right. There's nothing in these three books that you can't put in play. most people read these books and they come to me and go, Brandon, you did all that? Like anybody could do that. Duh.
Right.
Exactly. And that's what I'm most proud of about the books is that I don't tell you what to do. I show you what I did. You know, so my consulting style, my sales style isn't about telling you what to do. It's about showing you what I did, using my storytelling, my examples to help you kind of connect with me so you can kind of put it in your own words and take action. And my last thing I'll say to you is it's a difficult period of time for everyone, but take action over anxiety.
Words of wisdom.
Put action into play over anxiety because we all have anxiety now. If you're not feeling some anxiety, you're probably not normal. Everybody's got some anxiety now with everything going on, but take action, you know, keep busy. And, you know, the anxiety levels will be more minimized. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon, Brandon.
Thanks a lot, man.